In the quiet town of Hereford, Lucy Letby was born on a frosty January morning in 1990. Her childhood dreams were woven with compassion and care, setting her on a path to become a guardian of newborns. After pursuing her nursing education at the University of Chester, she embarked on a journey to fulfill her passion. However, the innocence that seemed to define Lucy Letby's early years would soon give way to a sinister truth that lurked beneath the surface. In July 2018, her world crumbled as she was arrested in connection with a series of infant deaths that sent shockwaves through the healthcare community. The once devoted neonatal nurse found herself facing allegations that shook the very foundation of trust in the medical system. The subsequent trial, spanning months and capturing national attention, became a battleground where truth clashed with deception. As families of the victims, medical professionals, and the nation awaited justice, the haunting question lingered: what drove Lucy Letby to commit such heinous acts? Was it a hunger for power, an insatiable desire for control, or something far more sinister that lurked within? Delving deep into her past, we uncover the journey that led Lucy Letby to the neonatal unit and the chilling events that transpired within its walls. The corridors of the hospital, once a place of healing, became the setting for a nightmare that forever altered lives. Through the lens of experts, investigators, and those who were closest to her, we seek to understand the motivations that guided her actions and the lasting impact on the lives she forever changed. In this documentary, we embark on a journey that takes us into the heart of darkness. We uncover the shocking truth behind Lucy Letby's reign of terror. Parents of babies murdered and maimed by Lucy Letby today describe their 8 years of torture after she was convicted of killing 7 newborns. As more families were warned their children could be victims of the pure evil nurse, with police now reviewing the care of 4,000 babies admitted to NHS wards where Letby had worked. The neonatal nurse, 33, now replaces Myra Hindley and Ian Brady as the most prolific child killer in modern British history after a jury found her guilty of murdering 7 premature babies and attempting to murder 6 more. Letby was also found not guilty of 2 attempted murder charges, but the jury could not reach verdicts on 6 further counts of attempted murder. But the cowardly killer refused to return to the dock yesterday to hear the last of the guilty verdicts, with the judge admitting he has no power to make her to come up from the cells. Calls are now deafening for a new law to force criminals to face their punishment, and the families of their victims in court. In a statement read outside Manchester Crown Court today, the victims' families said, "We are quite simply stunned. To lose a baby is a heartbreaking experience that no parent should ever have to go through, but to lose a baby, or to have a baby harmed in these particular circumstances, is unimaginable." Over the past 7 to 8 years, we have had to go through a long, torturous and emotional journey. From losing our precious newborns and grieving their loss, seeing our children who survived, some of whom are still suffering today, to being told years later that their death or collapse might be suspicious, nothing can prepare you for that news. Letby, who faces a whole life term, meaning she will die in prison, murdered 5 baby boys and 2 baby girls and attempted to murder 4 boys and 2 girls between June 2015 and June 2016. She preyed on babies small enough to fit in the palm of her hand by injecting air or insulin into their bloodstreams or feeding tubes, causing them to collapse and die. In other cases, she rammed medical equipment down their throats, causing them to bleed profusely as they lay in their cots. Among her victims were twins and 2 boys in a set of identical triplets, who she murdered within 24 hours of each other after returning from a week-long holiday to Ibiza. Letby would comfort the parents of children she killed, even sending them sympathy cards after their funerals. Before attacking innocent newborns as young as 23 weeks, she had told mothers and fathers, "Trust me, I'm a nurse." After she killed one child, she texted a colleague and said, "Dad was on the floor crying, saying, 'Please don't take our baby away,' when I took him to the mortuary. It's just heartbreaking. It was the hardest thing I've ever had to do." After each of her murders, Letby appeared animated and excited, offering to bathe, dress, and take photographs of her victims' bodies. Due to her lack of contrition, her motive remains unclear, but the prosecution believes she got a thrill out of playing God. They also suggested she had been trying to impress a married doctor, knowing he'd be the one to come and help if she hurt children in her care. Detective Superintendent Paul Hughes, the senior investigating officer in the case, today admitted he could not say how many other active cases there are, but added, "There are cases where we've told parents, Of those 4,000 children, only cases highlighted as medically concerning will be investigated further. The review at Liverpool Women's Hospital does not involve any deaths. This afternoon, the Department of Health heeded families' calls for an independent public inquiry. It said this will examine the circumstances surrounding the deaths and incidents, including how concerns raised by clinicians were dealt with. Today, Lucy Letby has been convicted of being one of the worst serial killers in British history. Her bosses at the time faced serious questions after her 10-month trial, Britain's longest ever murder case, heard how hospital executives initially refused to remove her from the unit, even after paediatricians raised their suspicions during her year-long killing spree. Consultants demanded Letby be removed from her frontline job, but for a time incredulous hospital bosses steadfastly refused to believe she was to blame, claiming she was too nice to carry out such despicable crimes. Letby cried in court as the first of the guilty verdicts were returned last week following a 10-month trial. Her mother broke into a series of anguished sobs, which continued even after she had left the court. At one point she cried out, "You can't be serious. This cannot be right." This week, she refused to be in the dock. Inside her messy, childlike home, police found a post-it note on which she had scrawled, "I am evil, I did this." In one case, a senior nurse on duty had to repeatedly tell Letby to come out of a room where a grieving couple were spending their last moments with their infant son. The father said Letby came in with a ventilated basket and told them, "You've said your goodbyes. Do you want me to put him in here?" This prompted his wife to tell her, "He's not dead yet."
This was a cruel, calculated, and cynical campaign of child murder involving the smallest and most vulnerable of children, knowing that your actions were causing significant physical suffering and would cause untold mental suffering. You removed and retained confidential records of events relating to your crimes and checked up on bereaved parents. There was a deep malevolence bordering on sadism in your actions.
Some of those she attacked were twins. In one case she murdered both siblings, in another she killed 2 of 3 triplets. In 2 instances she murdered one twin but failed in her attempts to kill the other. The harrowing crimes committed by Letby, who was in her 20s when she carried out her killing spree, have horrified Britain. Earlier the court heard emotional, heart-wrenching statements from the parents of those she murdered and tried to kill. The mother of one murdered baby boy said, "There is no sentence that will ever compare to the excruciating agony that we have suffered as a consequence of your actions."
Professor David Wilson, a leading criminologist, told the Mail that this desperation to be acknowledged at work were signs of a hero complex and narcissism in Letby's personality. Placing herself at the centre of a crisis was also indicative of the mental condition, Munchausen's, he said. Pascal Jones, a senior Crown prosecutor, said parents had been exposed to her morbid curiosity and her fake compassion. She said Lucy Letby was entrusted to protect some of the most vulnerable babies. Little did those working alongside her know that there was a murderer in their midst. She did her utmost to conceal her crimes by varying the ways in which she repeatedly harmed babies in her care. She sought to deceive her colleagues and pass off the harm she caused as nothing more than a worsening of each baby's existing vulnerability. In her hands, innocuous substances like air, milk, fluids or medication like insulin would become lethal. She perverted her learning and weaponized her craft to inflict harm, grief and death. Time and again, she harmed babies in an environment which should have been safe for them and their families. Parents were exposed to her morbid curiosity and her fake compassion. The conviction of Lucy Letby has left a nation reflecting on the depths of evil that can reside within human beings. Her crimes have shattered lives, upended families, and exposed the vulnerabilities that exist within our systems. The horror of her actions serves as a stark reminder that vigilance, accountability, and compassion are paramount in safeguarding the most vulnerable among us. As society processes the chilling reality of her deeds, let us be united in our determination to prevent such horrors from ever happening again. Through transparency, reform, and collective commitment, we can honor the memory of the innocent lives lost and work toward a future defined by hope and healing.
Lucy Letby, on each of the 7 offences of murder and the 7 offences of attempted murder, I sentence you to imprisonment for life.
Lucy Letby was sentenced to life in prison. Do you think the sentence was befitting? Thanks for tuning in and see you next time on Crime on Steroids.